What's up, everyone? This is Heist. Today we are playing Train Simulator 2022. We're going to give another shot at the big boy. Obviously, last time I assumed that the simulation was not as good as it is, and we blew it up. It didn't actually blow up, but again, maybe that was the part that wasn't accurate. I had a bit of a mess up because I assumed that the injectors did not work like the real thing, and surprise, surprise, they do work like the real thing. So you have to get your flow established first before you can actually force water into the boiler. And yeah, I actually did a second stab at it that wasn't recorded and actually primed the boiler. So we went all the way the other way. So perhaps this time it'll average out and we'll actually be able to run a train somewhere, you know, not to hell. But anyways, I am joined by a good friend of mine, Justin Cardis, who actually provided a lot of the feedback on the simulation to Smokebox on the big boy. So he's going to have the insider scoop on what's up. How's it going, Justin?
It's going good. How are you?
Not so bad. Not so bad. So tell the folks kind of your history and what you did as far as the big boy sim.
Well, I was kind of the guy behind the scenes. I did a lot of like the quality assurance and everything, did a lot of the beta testing, and ran many miles with this engine, dialing it in, getting it to where it feels right.
Well, that's awesome. That's you know, it's really cool that someone from the industry actually got to be, you know, a part of that, so that we can ensure that the sim's really good. Because that's always what kills me on most of the train sims, is that it's kind of close, but not really. But this one's really kind of spectacular, and it's one of the few engines I actually enjoy operating in this game.
The big boy, the FEF, only reason why I still have this sim. Not gonna lie.
Right there with you. Okay, well, so we kicked off Auto Fireman, and we were pretty much at the same location on the Wasatch Grade route that we had our failure on, and we're going to see if we can't highball out of here. But I don't know. We've got some coal going. I don't know if you've got better feedback than increase fire, increase water, and go.
Yeah, so how I normally do it is on the quadrant for the steam jets.
Mm-hmm.
I like to start out at about a 45-degree angle.
About a 45?
Yeah, and that just kind of keeps everything even. And how I fire this is I typically do a heel in the back and just fire the front quadrants.
Oh, okay. So it likes it in the back like a K36 does almost, huh?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's fun.
It's kind of programmed like that. And some of the sounds are from a K36.
Are they really?
A K36, a K37 that you are very familiar with.
Are you serious?
Yeah, listen to the air brakes. Does that not sound exactly like a K37?
Hang on.
Especially when you go to take a set.
Come on, come over here. Yeah, that's a little familiar. Did we manage to overcharge? Are we super cool?
You did manage.
Okay, well, ADT is scary, Justin.
Yeah, so I can explain that to you.
Yeah,
especially like how some of this stuff works.
I ought to use the hotkeys,
so
apparently.
Yeah, I usually use the keys to run this engine because it's more finite controls.
Gotcha.
So right now you got an overcharge condition. Best way to do that is just plug it and completely.
It won't go further right than this, and that doesn't even look like we're even in application to me.
Nope. Try hitting the squiggly line far left.
There's lap. There's service. There's emergency. Now we've dumped it.
So yeah, just let it dump for a little bit, and then we'll recharge it.
Perfect. So I did do a little bit of reading about AET after my first endeavor because I didn't really know what the difference was. And I was confused about first service. And first service is just kind of like your 26L equivalent of, boom, you move it to minimum reduction and then you get your 6-pound set or whatever it is, right?
Kind of. So what ADT is it's meant for engines that ran long trains.
Okay.
Big boy definitely fits the bill there.
Indeed.
So how the UP rules worked was your first service should be cut in if you have more than 50 cars.
Okay.
That's the train brake pipe length that it works best at. So above 50, you need to have it cut in. Below 50, you should have it cut out. And then same goes for the controlled emergency. 50 cars is the golden rule.
Interesting. And what's the controlled emergency?
The controlled emergency, what it does is, if you have it cut in and put the train into emergency, the independent pressure builds up at a slower rate, so it allows you to have more control over slack in an emergency situation.
So you don't end up jackknifing with the engine setting up too quick with a lot of cars behind you.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, I think I got my water going too good and then was messing with the brake stand too much, and so now we're like close to priming the boiler, so we should probably start using some water.
Yeah.
And it looks like our brake pipe still hasn't recovered, so I guess we're almost there. Well, let's see if we can't get this thing rolling here. And from what I recall in my last playthrough, the grade starts pretty quick, so we want to highball through the yard pretty much here.
Yep. And your coal's looking good. Something I like to check is if you click on the boiler card, it'll tell you like your levels as far as like how even your fire bed is.
Oh, interesting. That's quite a lot of that's quite a lot of things to look at.
Right.
We'll get this thing rolling first, and then we'll dive into that, I think. Roger. Okay. Well, we've got it. The throttle's on the ceiling. We're all the way in the corner, so we got a fair amount of train behind us, is what I'm hearing there.
The train we're running's a little over 3,200 tons. Pretty much simulates what a fully loaded reefer train would be for one of these engines.
It's a nice looking train.
UP's limit, they try to keep it under 3,000 tons for eastbound reefer trains, so that way they can get over the road at a quicker speed.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it was the train that I ran in the scenario, I think, was a little bit heavier than that, and yeah, it was a slog up the hill before I ran out of water, of course. So let's see if we can't get some speed here. So we have coal bed unevenness. I wish I had that stat when I was actually firing.
Yeah, that'd be pretty helpful.
That's fun. That's really cool. The amount of detail that goes in this is just brilliant.
Yeah, there's a lot of coding behind the scenes. A lot.
Well, Justin, why don't you tell the people a little bit of your Steam history so they can understand your credentials a little better?
So my Steam history is a little varied. I've done the tourist railroad scene for some time. I worked at the Georgetown Loop for 6 or 7 years. Got a lot of experience doing day-to-day Steam operations. And also did the museum scene, helped with the 491.
Indeed.
At the Colorado Railroad Museum.
Hence why we know each other.
Yes. And yeah, and then started my own nonprofit and worked on a little caboose, and that little caboose has turned out to be quite the project.
Well,
and
things made out of wood. Old things made out of wood. Let me tell you.
Yeah, yeah. I recommend avoiding wood cars at all costs, but and then after that, I needed to up my potential as far as income goes, and decided to go with a Class 1, and it's been an adventure ever since.
That sounds about right. A lot of people asked this question last time. Is there any change in the sim with the door open versus closed?
I do not believe so, no.
Yeah, it's kind of just helpful to look and see what the fire's doing. Keep it wide open. We're on the hill now, and boom, there goes the speed. I guess I got to really keep the bar just about as far forward as I can.
Yeah, this engine, so if you look at the back pressure gauge, I'll give you a little pro tip on that.
Yeah.
Anything, the maximum you want to see is 14 to 15 pounds of back pressure.
Okay.
That's going to give you the best power down without consuming your coal out of the firebox.
Gotcha. Yeah, we don't... I've always heard the myth that the big boys operated with the fire actually not as a fire bed, but it was burning above the grates because they were working so hard. Obviously, that's not simulated because that would be like dynamic simulation of individual pieces of coal and what the fire does, which is just way too challenging for anyone in this game's engine. But how much truth is there to that, do you think?
Well, I've never fired a stoker. I would love to, but I don't think that there's truth to that because you need to have a fire bed. Otherwise, you're going to have cold air drafting in, and there's going to be some coal. I would say probably maybe 30 to 40% of it just burst into flames and immediately became exhaust, but you're going to have some chunks go down.
That's kind of what I had the feeling of. I mean, when you fire the little ones, obviously you're using bigger pieces of coal. The coal that runs through the stoker has to be pretty small in order for it to actually get through. It's a lot finer than the sometimes dinosaur eggs you'd get in 491. But even when the little ones are working, you can see, you know, that the fire can jump around a little bit. So, you know, bigger engine, more power. You'd only think that would get further expanded upon.
Yeah, and you know, draft does play a part in where your coal goes in real life and in this simulation.
Oh, does it really?
It does.
That's fun. So you really do need to fire each area individually.
You do, and you know, you just a lot of it is by experience and by feel.
It's both a science and an art. Yeah, there's that's one of the things that really doesn't get captured in a lot of train simulator type games is exactly, you know, the proper procedure of really firing. I mean, it's just romanticized in media as, oh yeah, just you shovel the coal and the coal goes in and that's that. But you really, really have to accurately place it, and you got to be quite good with the shovel if you're hand bombing them. But obviously with a stoker, we've got to adjust things on the fly here. I haven't fired a stoker either, of course, but I've always heard that that you'd also have to fire like the rear corners with a shovel too.
Yeah, and you know, it depends on the stoker. Some stokers are better at that. Like I think the street stoker was pretty good at firing the back corners. The standard, the MB stoker, fairly good. But some of the other ones, you definitely had to fire the corners.
Gotcha.
It's all that technology, you know, going from the 1900s all the way through to the 1940s.
That's cool. Okay, well, we managed to get a lot more back pressure, which was we've got picked up a little speed, so we're admitting less steam in because the pistons are cycling faster. So well, that's it. It seems to be keeping up with it. It's just that the water is not. So we'll get that flowing pretty good now because we're doing a good 22, 23 mile an hour. I think I'm already past where I blew up the last one, so...
I expect you probably to do around 28 miles an hour.
Okay, well, that's good. Speed limit says... well, it said 90 earlier, but now it's 50, so I think we could do that.
Yeah. The speed limit for the engine in real life was 45 miles an hour on this subdivision.
Was it really? Okay. I always heard that everyone talks about how it could do 80 miles an hour, but, I mean, those... 68-inch drivers are not small. They're not narrow gauge small, but, I mean, 80 miles an hour always seemed like I doubt they really hit that terribly often kind of thing.
Yeah, and if they did, it was from the straights in Wyoming.
Yeah, not this steep section. Wasatch Grade, this is like way western Wyoming, right? Heading towards Evanston and then Utah?
Yes, this is, so Echo's in Utah, which is where we just left.
Gotcha.
And then you come up, you go to Curvo, which is just barely in Utah, and then you cross WYUTA. Basically, that's the state line between Wyoming and Utah, and then you get into Evanston.
Gotcha. Yeah, the coal has started to disappear. I'm looking at the fire mass readout. But man, it's nice to see this thing actually cooking pretty good, because it was pain just listening to it slog up at like 4 miles an hour. So getting a decent amount of speed under your belt, that's actually pretty nice.
Yeah, it's helpful to hit hills
right
faster too.
Yes, yeah, 1.1% grade doesn't sound like much for us narrow gauge folk, but 1.1 on standard gauge when you're talking about 3,000 tons behind you, I mean that's significant.
And just like it is in real life, when you get into the finer points of running this engine, it's all about slack control.
I believe it. I believe it. Yeah, I've never had the opportunity to run like 50 cars or 57 cars or whatever it is. I think I've done about 15. And there are some tricky spots at the museum and the Cumbres and Toltec where you really have to manage the slack, but it's not, I don't think it's anything quite like this.
I'm just starting my running on a Class 1, and the longest I've had was 149 cars.
That's a couple.
Yeah.
Just a few.
DP'd and all that, so yeah.
Oh, that's fun. That's got to be interesting. I've always heard running with DP is apparently the way to go, and you get more power out of it that way, but I've never quite understood the science of that myself.
Yeah, basically it's whatever your rears are pushing takes that weight away from what your head is pulling. So that's how you can get away with longer trains without breaking couplers.
Gotcha.
And then there's like this, we'll just say complicated math to figure out where your engines actually go.
That sounds about right. So, is my stoker clogged? What's going on here? Because my fire mass is falling through the floor here, and increasing the valve does not seem to be doing much.
What's your back pressure reading?
Some. Oh, back pressure in the cylinders.
Back pressure.
Yeah. Well, about 15.
About 15, so back it off a little bit.
Give it a little less, ease it off. So at some point, what you're saying is that you can't keep up with the consumption rate, even with the stoker running pretty much wide open?
That is correct. You have to back it off.
Interesting. So it really is even with a mechanical stoker, you can hit the limit with a machine this big. That's I had no idea. I would have assumed that you could have smothered the darn thing, but wow, that's something else.
That's the one thing that gave me a lot of heartburn doing the testing is I could never find actual documentation as to how much one of these stokers could actually output.
Yeah, you gotta wonder, and I don't think that's an easy thing to calculate either. I mean, probably the best thing would be to look up if UP had any records for how much coal they would put in a day, and then figure out the speed and the tonnage and whatever. But even then, that's not really scientific.
Yeah, and and we had the records for the big boys on this grade. They ran 3 different engines and did the coal consumption and water consumption and averaged all 3 and based this engine simulation off of that.
That's cool. That's cool that we have some of those records. It's always surprising how much the railroad actually kept a hold of.
Yeah, UP really did keep a lot of their records, and it's been very helpful. Like, as you can see, all the blueprints made a very accurate model.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I was kind of surprised and happy to see that Smokebox actually commented on my last video in a couple places and was correcting little details, and it was cool to see him engaged. But I'm excited to see his next projects because I know he's making a new version of the Challenger, and everything. I mean, I've got the big boy, the FEF, and then 1 or 2 of his ancient old itty bitty choo-choos, and they're all, I mean, just a treat. So,
yeah, I'm looking forward to the Challenger as well.
I'm sitting there wondering in the back of my head if he's going to make a 9000 class, because I think that's like the next fun thing in terms of big, silly Union Pacific power.
Yeah, I personally would like to see a 282.
282 would be nice. That's a lot more run-of-the-mill. Give a better feel for those of us that have done, had the opportunity to run locomotives that most people get opportunities to run.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I wanted a little bit more speed, and I've eaten my fire to get there.
It's like real life. You got to figure out what you're trading.
Indeed, yeah. So, the way I always look at firing when you're really, out on the road really doing the thing, you've got a couple responsibilities as firemen. You need to maintain the fire. You need to maintain the water level, most critically, which I failed at last time. Oops. you need to maintain pressure, and then of course you're responsible for all left-hand side of the train kind of protection. So as we go around a left-hand curve, you need to be paying attention to where the locomotive's going and making sure you're not running into anything. Do you agree with that, or do you have anything else that you've seen as a fireman out there?
Yeah, getting along with your engineer. No.
Not beating him to death with the scoop.
Yes. And, you know, it's teamwork. The engineer and the fireman have to talk in order to get down the road. And the most important thing for a fireman to maintain is water. Because otherwise, Gettysburg. Yeah,
otherwise Gettysburg, literally. It's important to have pressure to make sure the train's running, and it's important to have enough fire so that you're not sucking cold air in. But too much water, and you can break the engine, and too little water, and you can break everything and kill yourself. So, yeah, the locomotive rapidly becomes a bomb. And we've decreased in grade. We're getting some speed now. Here we go. But yeah, no, I 100% agree. You got to be really on the same page as your engineer, particularly in oil firing land. And that's something that maybe we'll have to do an episode on the FEF and have you talk through that, because I've only gotten to play with an oil burner one time, and it theoretically should have exploded. So that's another whole different conversation, though.
Right? Stay bolts. What are those?
Yeah. What are stay bolts?
Oil firing is good, and honestly, I kind of look at stoker fire as it has all the benefits of coal firing and all the benefits of oil firing.
Yeah, it's really kind of the marriage between the two, whereas because you're using such small pieces of coal, the fire behaves closer to an oil fire than, you know, like a giant brick of thick coal, like, you know, if you're hand bombing or something.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's more fluid, it's definitely more relaxed on the body.
That's true. Yeah, that's, yeah, after 12 hours of shoveling coal into a K-37 in a day, yeah, you're ready for a beer. You're ready for a beer, a shower, and a nap. But if you're sitting on the seat, it's different. But
and depending on the grade of coal, it may be a little different order. You might be showering, then beer, then nap.
True. Very, very true. Yeah, we're really cooking now. And the speed limit's changed back to 90, but it looks like the grade's going to climb up again. So,
because on this game, so it's set up as you're a passenger train, even though clearly you're not. You have to go in and edit that, and it's
interesting.
More trouble than it's worth.
So is this we've got passenger speeds on the timetable? Is what we got going on?
Yes, that's what you're looking at, the passenger speed.
Oh well, that's. Well, anyways, we got told that we could go 90, so we're gonna try and go 90, but I doubt we'll get there anyways. So.
Get to about 52 before the grade hits you.
Oh man, this is cool. We're really flying, and it's going vaguely okay. The water's a touch high for my taste. I don't know why 1.25 is full. That's what I discovered in my last playthrough, but
that's very much true. 1.25 gets you prime cylinders.
Yeah, and that's a bad day. And particularly if you're actually running tonnage like this and really superheating that hard, yeah, you would carry over, and then you try to do a steam locomotive burnout as it quickly flashes to steam in the superheater unit. So that's a bad day.
Yeah, I've had experience with that. It's not fun. Don't recommend 0-10.
We've never gotten 491 hot enough at the museum that she actually starts to superheat. Because I've seen carryover happen, but it was giant carryover like 346. She wouldn't do
the milkshake coming out the stack.
Yeah, she wouldn't do the burnout. She'd just do the milkshake. Well, now what have we turned on? Is that sand?
So that's the sander.
Oh, okay.
The one above it is the smoke hood.
Yeah, that was weird because it looks just like a sand valve. But what? Describe the smoke hood to me. Like, how come? What was the operational purpose of them back in the day?
So the smoke hood is only for tunnel operations.
They're
air operated, and what it does is it deflects the blast away from the tunnel portal and moves it back, so that way you don't have rocks falling out of the tunnel onto your locomotive.
That's a bad day. Yeah, you don't want that.
You're just going to be going into a tunnel and then hear a loud bang.
Well, we're now officially speeding, which I feel like is an achievement.
Achievement unlocked. Speeding.
Achievement unlocked. Getting decertified. Nailed it.
You're only doing 3.
The speed limit changes up to 90. I know that in a lot of railroad rule books, they'll have the speed limit, and then you're allowed to have, like 5 mile an hour over or something like that. Is that the case on the UP stuff?
Yeah. So on the UP, on the modern day stuff, you have up to 5 is a company loss, 10 overall for FRA decert.
Gotcha.
And then you have things like crested grade, 1%, 2%, and that's just a whole can of worms.
Yep. Yeah. It like anything with railroading, it just gets really complex really quick. It's always interesting. I had a lot of folks talk to me about the video that I put out that was like the 10 levels of steam locomotive understanding, and we're like, well, you should have made this into more videos, or you could have made this a whole series. And it's, well, like anything in this whole scheme of things, there are so many little details that you could really just continue down levels further and further and further, and you'll probably never cover it all. So,
I mean, I've been doing this steam railroading for a very long time before I went to the modern stuff, and I never learned as much as in a lifetime. You'll never cover everything.
It's just that complex. There's just that much that goes into it. I've only been railroading for about 8 years now, steam side and class 1 and everything. And there are more nuances and details and things I'm learning every time I go back to it. It's really, that's what makes it so much fun, I think, is just really trying to find that next level of understanding. But yeah, there's so many little silly nuances and things you never would have even thought were possible or something that had to be considered back in the day. So,
and and it's like, you got your running craft, and then you have your maintaining, like shop craft, and
they're so different. Yeah,
and other times they're completely different.
Yeah, that's always insane, is the difference there. I mean, learning the shop side and learning the real fundamental mechanical side behind this stuff, and then learning to operate it too. I mean, very few have mastered both, and there's a reason they're considered the crazy gurus amongst us, because, yeah, that's... I know a little, and baby, I can't guess the rest, to attempt to quote Leonard Skinner. There are so many little stupid details that I wish I knew about valve gear and the specifics of it that, yeah, there's always more knowledge to be gained.
Valve gear, timing, hydrostatic lubricators.
Oh, yeah.
In the industry, a lot of people look at hydrostatic lubricators like it's black magic.
Well, they are, so...
exactly.
It uses the chemistry and the physics to make the oil happen, which is bizarre, so...
And when they go south, they go south.
Yeah, that's never a good time. Looks like we're diverging into 2 sets of railroad here. We have 2 different grades for uphill, downhill at this section.
Yeah. So the left-hand grade is the newish. It was built in like the 1920s upgrade. The right-hand side is the original main line, and the left side is a more average grade, whereas the right side will have flats and then like 1.2% up, and then more flats.
Gotcha. So this is a more engineered grade then.
Correct.
Cool. We're still hauling the mail up the new segment here.
Yeah, it's going to be this way all the way to Wyoming. Curvo's where this track crosses over that track.
Oh, gotcha. That's cool.
It's about another 20 or so miles, I think.
Gotcha. I've not done a great job. I'm not keeping it right up against the pops. I got it about 285 right now. But, oh well. This is my first time successfully firing a stokered engine in Train Simulator, I guess. Not since they came out. I bought this add-on probably, I don't know when it came out, a year or 2 ago, or however long it is now. But I ran it then, and then when I did that first video, I literally just fired it back up, and I was like, yeah, no, it's not that complicated. I could just figure it out. I could just go do it again. And
then you need a pilot.
Yeah, and now I've this pilot, but a genuine pilot who's done the real thing. So, and giving feedback. So appreciate you coming on. What's your favorite thing about this engine, either real or simulated?
Okay, so we'll do the simulated, and then we'll do the real, because this
May
is
as
also
well.
my favorite engine in real life.
Fair enough.
So on the simulated one, I love the fact that you can have either an auto engineer or an auto fireman or flip-flop or both or none. It really allows you flexibility into what you want to do, because you can just have the auto engineer run and you can just fire. That's really fun. You can do both. That's a handful. Or you can do neither and just take pretty photos.
Yeah, that is kind of fun. It is always genuine fun to watch it roar by trackside. So.
And then on the real one, I really like the layout of like the cab. It makes sense to me, and the engine, it's massive, but it's still clean. Like, the air pumps are hidden behind the shield. You don't have piping all over the place. It's a very clean looking locomotive.
The lines are really nice on it. What was it? I think it was, I've heard rumors that like the guy that designed these at Alco used to be a building designer or something, or he was used to making really sleek, streamlined things. I don't remember what the story was.
And UP had a huge part. The mechanical department had a huge part in the design of this engine, because when UP first came with like the FEFs especially, nobody thought that the FEF would work as UP said it would, because they had all these old theories, namely like the piston speed theory, and they were just like, this engine, you can't have a 484 as just a passenger engine. And UP really broke the mold on that.
Huh. Well, that's supremely cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know that they had so much of a design impact on these. I always assumed it was like a Baldwin, where it was like, okay, no, this is our standard, this is our choo-choo that you ordered, and here you go.
Yeah, that's Baldwin. But, I love Chevys, but no, so, like, I went there. But, the Alcos, especially the bigger roads, they can have their own input. They have their own standard catalog, of course, but the bigger roads like UP have their own input. It's really cool to actually look at this stuff, and there's just so many differences between the engines compared to today, where, oh, yay, it's another -9. They're all the same.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I always remarked on and was frustrated with working in a roundhouse when I worked for BNSF. I worked at the Inner Bay Roundhouse up here in Seattle, and it was painfully obvious why roundhouses didn't make any more sense anymore, because when you had steam engines and you needed to have you had various different tasks, passenger, freight, whatever, long haul, short haul, switching, you had a pretty designed locomotive for that purpose. You had a certain driver size for a certain speed, you had a certain wheel arrangement for a certain reason, and you kind of needed that locomotive. I need the 4001 to slog it up this hill right now, but if I was running fast passenger, I'd need an FEF, or I'd need a 10-wheeler or something. And in the modern day, you have road power and you have switch power, and it doesn't matter really, what it is, more or less. Yes, sometimes you have industrial clearances and you need 4-axle versus 6, but by and large, horsepower is horsepower is horsepower. And so choking your output of work with a turntable where you can only move one thing at a time, and you've got, 5 or 6 locomotives to release in a day and get back out on the road. Oh man, the coordination just sucked. It was cool to work in a roundhouse and see the artifacts of the GN still kicking around in the places that they couldn't clean the soot off the ceiling. That was really cool, and the foamer inside me loved it, but the guy that needed to get trains to go, locomotives to go pull trains, that guy despised working in the roundhouse, because just having an assembly line of, okay, give me another SD40 and we'll run the train, or give me another -9. I just need 4,400 horsepower. I don't care what format it's in. Yeah, that was not the best setup in the world for the Class 1s anymore.
Yeah, and I'm learning more about modern day stuff, and it's kind of interesting. So on like the newer engines, you have that controlled tractive effort for accelerating, where it derates it. Well, that kind of makes the diesel function for like the first 20 miles an hour like a steam engine.
Really?
If you think about it.
Yeah.
Because a steam engine, the tractive effort and the horsepower curve is kind of like a bell-shaped, whereas diesel, it just starts out strong and then it just goes weak. So it kind of steps it a little bit and kind of makes it almost a little like a steam engine.
That's interesting. It makes sense. The old saying for the Stoker's blocked. Hang on, we got an event here.
Okay, so
we shut it. Do we need to reverse it, right?
Yeah, and that reverse lever is actually on the
the tender. Yeah.
The tender there. So, yep, right there.
Okay, reversed, and now we will open the valve. Stoker's cleared. We gotta put it back to forward. Get it rolling again. Okay, good. Crisis averted, perhaps. And we've also got a water gauge clogged.
More pressure on the steam for the Stoker motor.
Oh, sure. I also had a water gauge clogged that I was trying to figure out. Yeah, you want it about somewhere in the 20 to 50 range, yeah?
Yeah.
Fun. All right. Well, we've managed to clear that out. We're still, we've been burning through the fire pretty good. Oh, we've got a tunnel coming up. Do I need to get my hood?
You can pop the hood up.
Pop the hood. Here we go. Oh, yeah, so that really just sends it straight back at you. That must be pleasant for the engineer.
Luckily, they didn't have something like Moffat,
Yeah, we're just gonna close some windows here, because I can feel the black lung setting in right now. That's fun. The little stuff like that. It feels somewhat gimmicky to have like the Stoker did this, or you got to do this, that kind of event. But it keeps you on your toes a little bit. You can't just sit back and let it ride for all day.
Yeah, and blockages like that happen on the real one.
Yeah,
one.
It's a simulation of a failure.
Something that I thought would be really fun would be to add like a maintenance, separate standalone program, but that would just confuse everybody.
Yeah, that's a lot. There's a couple games out there that try to do that, like the mechanic side, but yeah, those are they're not great. I've done a Twitch stream where Real G had been violated, and it was just too much fun to make fun of because of how wrong everything is. And yeah, the nuance of that, like getting people who can make video games really to understand that to that level, to be able to put something together that really encompasses actual maintenance on these. I mean, it's just so big in scope for such a limited market. I kind of doubt you'd ever see something really, really good in that front, but maybe.
You never know. I mean, technology improves.
It's true. It's true. So earlier you made note of a theory that the railroad had, and I'd like to hear about it from you, because I've heard explanations before, but I'm not 100% up to speed on it. And you're talking about the piston speed theory that they had before they came out with the FEF. Well,
yes.
What's the deal on that?
So the piston speed theory was your piston, depending on the driver diameter, didn't matter as far as what the upper limit of speed was. What mattered was the piston speed. How fast could this piston go back and forth without disintegrating? And the theory was, I think it was like 1230, I think, feet per minute or something like that, was the maximum you could actually get the piston to go. So that's why the bigger engines with the bigger drivers could go faster, but there still was a limit.
Huh.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes sense, right? Because you can only you're changing the direction of something so massive, so fast. I mean, you know, theoretically, a smaller piston that runs a bigger crank can let you go faster, but that's at the expense of power.
And what UP came to the table of that was their 9000s were beating that theory on a regular day in freight.
Oh wow.
So that opened the door for further expansion into the theory, and UP opened up the blast nozzle, the exhaust nozzle in the smoke box, way more than anyone else had, because everyone was afraid that it wasn't going to draft as well and you would starve. And so by UP doing that, they could get the better speed out of the pistons, because it was easier for them to exhaust the pressure than it was for it to put the pressure in. So
gotcha.
You alleviated back pressure.
So yeah, that's one of the things that they talk about a lot in terms of speed, and then talking about expansive working within the valve gear and making the piston move, is that you start to cushion the backside. That's what your back pressure is, right? You've got steam being pre-admitted to slow down the piston as you're up to speed running quick. And if you can't exhaust out, you know, in time, you're actually limiting the speed that you can run even further. So that's interesting. I didn't know that little piece about it and how UP had into it, or that they increased the size of the blast nozzle. That's cool.
And then also on the UP found out through trial and error that if you eliminate 1 pound of back pressure, you gain 5 pounds of pressure, boiler pressure, on the opposite side of the piston.
Oh. That's interesting. So that
could get you going faster.
So that's all about our back pressure gauge here we're talking about. And this is plumbed from the piston, or where do you get the actual back pressure readout?
Okay, so the back pressure readout on this engine is on the engineer side, the back cylinder.
Engineer side, back cylinder, and it's on the saddle. And so it's reading the back pressure between the blast nozzle and the exhaust of the piston?
It measures the back pressure coming out of the on the cylinder. So, and that's why it kind of flickers a little when you're starting, because you got that slower speed.
Yeah, you're able to entirely exhaust it before rebuilding up that back pressure.
Mm-hmm.
That's super neat. None of the engines I've ever operated have ever had a back pressure gauge, except the oil burning engine that should have exploded, but I didn't get to run it.
None of the engines I ever ran had that. That's for sure.
It's a neat little thing and a handy tool. There's enough gauges in here to make me uncomfortable. I am happy with my 3, and this has like 8.
It's a lot more locomotive to run.
That's true. You want to play in the big leagues, you gotta play with lots of gauges.
Just imagine having to deadweight test everything.
Oh god, yeah, talk about maintenance. Once per annual inspection, you have to take each one of these gauges apart and then ensure that it reads the correct amount. I call it deadweight testing, because you've got weights that simulate the fluid pressure, and they're just typically just bored-on tube pressure gauges. So as more fluid pressure comes in, the board-on tube bends a little bit more, and that's actually what makes the needle move. It's entirely fluid and mechanical. And over time, things will change and warp and blah, 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 and the needle can lose its set, so you have to check them once a year. And that's a bit of a process. And doing that with this many gauges, I mean, that's just that much more maintenance.
And then people wonder why everyone said that these were maintenance intensive.
Yeah, right. Why did they get rid of steam? It wasn't because they weren't good. It was the maintenance side of things. That's my firm opinion. I mean, you think about modern day diesel locomotives. It was shocking to me to go to the BNSF shop after working at the museum for so long and seeing all these other railroad shops and dealing mostly with steam, and to go into a shop and there's no lathe. There was not a lathe at the shop. There was no mill. There were a couple drill presses, and that was it. That was the most extensive machine tool that we had at the roundhouse, and we would service, you know, up to like 40, 50 locomotives at the shop at a time for maintenance or anything else. And it's just,
it always gets me that like a lot of the guys complain, you know, about having to do the work on it. It's like, you and I come from a background where you have to do everything.
Yes.
And it's really not that much.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, versus diesel now, I mean, there's just so little that they have to do to them. I'm going to be talking through a video, talking through kind of a bunch of different levels of air brake understanding. And the most modern air brakes that are computer controlled have allowed the railroads to get away with not bringing in locomotives for periodic maintenance, scheduled preventative maintenance for 184 service days. So you can have a locomotive with computer-controlled air brakes. Theoretically, if it has no failures, which they never do, if they have no failures, they can run for 184 days before they see a shop for anything more intensive than fuel and sand and crew supplies.
That's crazy.
It's insanity, because for a steam engine, you have to take all the boiler pressure out, you have to let it cool off, and do a 30-day inspection. Every 30 service days, you have to do a boiler wash and wash all the scale out of the boiler and start over. So, I mean, you think they were maintaining these at least 6 times as often than we maintain diesel locomotives now. And it just starts to become, well, no, duh, they got rid of these. That and the fact that none of the parts are standard. I mean, there is a joke with EMD locomotives where they say that EMD stands for every model different, because they just are. They've been modified over the years. Some of those locomotives, I mean, the oldest engine on the BNSF fleet was working out of my terminal, 1954 SD9, that had been modified a zillion times. But those always tended to be different. But, you know, you get a -9 and a -9 and a -9. They're all going to be pretty much the same. And you just, parts are parts are parts. You can take parts from one engine, put them on another, and do what you got to do. This is the crossover you were talking about?
Yes, this is curve out right here.
This is cool. This is kind of neat. Huh. Well, I guess we got to get our hood going again. Oh, we got a whistle. I don't like the quilling on this.
Yeah, I usually use shift or enter and then the space bar.
Yeah, it's a little better if you start from the enter. Yeah, if you go to it, it's a little weird. But anyway, we had an issue with some SD75s at the roundhouse the one time. We started getting all these rebuilt SD75s. They, you know, went off to some location to get a Class 1 overhaul and totally get rebuilt, get fresh paint, everything. Come back and they're supposed to be creme de la creme, and guess what? They weren't. There's a shocker. There's a thought in mechanical reliability design called the bathtub curve, where the reliability of anything looks like a bathtub, where it's really unreliable at the start, but then it troughs out and it's flat, and it's typically reliable in the midpoint of its life. And then towards the end, when everything's worn out, it's once again non-reliable. Well, we were at the start of the bathtub, and the SD75s just hated us because they put a new computer control system on them, and the 294 was the 12th worst locomotive on the BNSF system, and it was my pain in the butt. Literally. 12th worst out of 8,500 locomotives. It was the 12th worst. It was the only thing in like the top 50 that wasn't an SD70.
Yeah.
Anyway, they had, I can't remember what kind of brake they had, but they had a computer-controlled air brake that we didn't have too many parts for. And we had this part fail on the 268. Yes, the BNSF 268, not the DNRGW 268. And so we robbed it off of the 274 and, you know, ordered one for the 268. And we went, like, down the chain of stealing part and putting on a different SD75 for 11 locomotives before the new part came in. It bounced. Oh, hang on. We could release this if we steal this part off this engine and put it on this one. With steam engines, you really can't do that because almost everything is fitted. There are some things that you could do that with, but it's just really not Yeah, it's most of the parts are custom fit, be it piping, be it mounting, be it running gear. Everything is custom, everything is machined, everything is specific. You can't just take, wheels out of one and stick them in another without doing fitment. So
the easiest thing to swap out on a steam engine is a tender.
True. Yeah, and that, Lord knows, that got done plenty of times. Did they ever...
Gave some people heartburn.
It gave some people heartburn, but... Well, 491's got 499's tender, but it was also stenciled 492, when we sandblasted it. I mean, I'm pretty sure that every engine must have had every other engine's tender on that railroad at some point or another. Do you know?
You got to do what you need to do to get it out on the road.
If you have a complete tender and a complete locomotive and they're stenciled for the wrong one, well, guess what? You've got paint. Make it happen. So...
I mean, UP did that with 4014 and 3985.
They did. Yeah, the 4014's still running with 3985's tender, isn't it?
I believe so.
Well, it's not like 3985 needs it. RIP.
Pressing F right now.
Pressing F in chat for 3985. I don't know. Who knows? I think only Ed knows what is going on with that thing. But
it is what it is. I mean, I'm just thankful we have what we have.
Yes, the fact that we have a big boy. I mean, I remember for years everyone said that it would never be restored. They'd never restore one. They couldn't. They're too big. They're too expensive. They're blah 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 blah. And they did the thing. I've still yet to see the darn thing, but I'll get out there one of these days.
It's nice.
Good God! I just looked at the flow rate in the tender water level, and I'm putting like 3 gallons a second in the boiler. That's some serious water delivery.
Gotta love a cold water pump.
The exhaust steam injector can really stick it in there, huh?
That it can, and you're not even full bore.
No, I'm not. I'm far from full bore. I think we're only at like 3 or 4, maybe. Yeah. About 4.5.
I also love the firing simulation.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, this is the only engine in this entire sim that has this capability.
Yeah, I mean, nothing else you can even... Like, the fireboxes aren't even modeled in anything else, as far as I know. And this one, you've got circulators, you can see stables, you see the whole fire, and it's actually the size of the firebox. It's actually correct. It's just staggering. Can we get inside the box? Someone said that I should be able to. Yeah, look at that. That'd be slightly uncomfortable, I think.
Well, let's put it this way. When I was doing all the testing for this engine before it got released, I was furloughed, so I had a lot of spare time on my hands.
Naturally.
And I was running this engine pretty much every single day.
Wow.
One day I got into it, I opened up the firebox, and I kid you not, I literally looked at the states to see if there was any leakers, because I was just in that mindset.
That's amazing. When the sim convinces you that you might have leaking stay bolts, it's a pretty good sim. Look at that. I mean, it's just great. And you can see I've got a bit of a pile building up in my back 2 corners, but you said you run yours with a heel, so I think that's okay.
Yeah, I run with a heel because with the way the arch brake is laid out, I think in real life, firing the front corners would probably be the best, because then you're choking your draft from there and forcing the draft to come up through there and give you a better mix. So that way you're not shocking the boiler as much.
That makes sense.
But it's also kind of cool. The more you play with this engine, the more I know the manual hits on this a little bit, but the time of the year changes how the engine behaves.
Really?
So, so during winter, when you go to take a brake set, you better do it with some distance out to warm your shoes up, because otherwise you're just going to go right past that red signal.
That's amazing. They simulate the temperature of the brake shoes.
Mm-hmm.
That's...
And, it just takes longer for the brakes to set up and everything, and fall and spring, you get more foaming in the boiler, which follows real life. That's
kind of incredible. So I touched on it last time a little bit, but I'm not as familiar with the actual signal foam meter device. And I know what foaming is, and I touched on it in the last video, but why don't you give us an overrun on what foaming is? And I'm not talking about children with cameras, I'm talking about the condition in the boiler.
You beat me to it. No. Okay, so foaming inside of a boiler is a condition of where you have either impurities or just something in the water that makes the steam frothy. And frothy is bad because it'll carry over into your superheaters and carries scale down into your valves and into your cylinders and scores them. So you really want to prevent that as much as you can. And so how the foam signal meter works is inside the boiler on the top, there's a trough. And that protects two diodes, or not diodes, but I can't remember what they're actually called off the top of my head. But basically when the foam enters that trough, it connects the circuit because it's an electrically powered device.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that's why you see the yellow light when the foam meter goes off. If you actually look at it, you can hit the test light, the little toggle switch there.
Oh yeah.
See them light up. So the yellow on the bottom is safe foam, as it clearly says. The red is the bad foam.
Yeah, you don't want bad foam.
When that signal meter detects it, UP's system, they have the blow-off cock right there that's pneumatically operated. That closes the circuit so that way you know to blow down the boiler and the water comes up and out through the top and then through the separator, and then it goes down and empties out below the engineer's seat on the ground so you can actually see the condition of the water that's coming out of the boiler. That's
quite neat. Huh. Yeah, that's more than what we have on 346.
Yeah, if you hit in the external view, Shift F7, I believe, or Shift F8, one of the two. Yeah, if you press and hold, you can see the blowdown operating. So you got the steam coming out the top, and then you got the water coming out the bottom.
That's really cool. All right, we've crested over Wasatch. I assume we're now downhill a little bit?
Yeah, we're going to be downhill for a little ways, and then you'll go through some undulation, and then you'll be pulling into Evanston.
Okay. So I've got the fire kind of dialed back a little bit. I mean, it's dialing back, and I've dialed back my water considerably. What else should I be doing? I should probably get a little air going, I'd imagine.
You're good. In real life, the speed limit was 20 back through there, but
yeah, it's fine. Passenger speed. Says I can do 90 coming up shortly.
Okay, now you're starting to sound like a Class 1 driver. It says 90, so I go 90.
It says 90, so I go 90, right?
So one of the things that you can do is, I can't really hear the sim that much, but if you shut all the way off, you hear the rods and everything going clunk.
Start clunking, yep.
Yeah, so if you just slowly open up your throttle just a little bit, just get it to stop but not chuff, that's putting steam into your cylinder to keep the lubrication going.
Ah. That's neat. Yeah, because you... are these mechanically fed?
Yeah, they're mechanically fed. So on one side is the valve oil. The other side is just your normal journal box oil that will lubricate the various fittings and everything.
Gotcha.
And then the hydrostatic is on the back head there. That's actually for the stoker motor.
Oh, really? I was wondering what the hydrostatic was for. I assumed air compressors, but...
But that's only if you're stationary. If you're moving, it's powered by one of the mechanical feeds.
Well, that's
so if
cool.
You're stationary, needing to use the stoker, you got to turn on the hydrostatic.
Interesting. All right. So mechanical lubrication means that something in the valve gear is actually cranking oil to other places. Typically, it's I don't know where it is on the big boy. Is it? Hang on. Looks like we got a mechanical right here, right there. And you can see that it's just a connection off the expansion link, and it ratchets this, and each ratchet starts to distribute oil, and I'm sure it's probably got about 17 more mechanical lubricators on it.
There's 2 on each side.
2 on each side. Good lord.
Those feeds go, and then they're split, I think, depending on what they feed, the feeds are split 2 to 4 times each.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, so it's a little bit more than the narrow gauge, but shocker, this engine's a little bit more than the narrow gauge.
And then on the air pumps, they have their own lubricators on them.
Oh, that's cool. I'd heard about those, talking about the different types of heads and different kinds of advanced air pumps that they modifications the cross compounds got. So these have mechanicals that are just built into the air pump.
Yep, and I believe I have no experience with them, but remember reading about them. They're air powered, so each time they stroke, it provides lubrication.
That's really cool. That makes a lot of sense, really. That's makes more sense than what we have. But again, bigger railroad, better setup.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting looking at all the blueprints for this engine and seeing how they did things. If I can go back in time and change some of the stuff that I've done, I definitely would.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially like concerning plumbing and everything. They did some pretty interesting stuff behind the backhead sheets there.
That's supremely cool.
And then the other thing I noticed you talked about was the smoke lifter. It's on the fireman side at the top.
Fireman side at the top. Yes. Yeah. What's that about?
So you use it when you're drifting. So if you actually want to shut the throttle all the way off, since we're going downgrade, demonstrate that. So if you go to the external view, you'll see smoke kind of trailing right at the cab level.
Yeah.
And in Wyoming, that can blow the smoke right into the cab.
Makes sense.
Now if you go back and turn that smoke, the little
this guy, yep,
up there, all the way up, you'll go back out and you'll see the smoke raise just a little bit, just enough to clear the cab.
Just enough to get it out of your face. That's...
Yeah.
We're missing a bridge there. That's fine.
Don't see any slow orders on my paperwork.
Well, we would have been in the ditch, but that's okay. We can... 4001 doesn't exist anymore. It wouldn't hurt to wreck it, right?
This could be worse. It could be 4005, and we can be coming up on a sheep herd.
Indeed. That's one of the, like, silliest stories on the railroad. Why did they wreck this train? Because of sheep. What?
Did you ever see the, I think it's the ICC, did a report on that derailment?
No, I haven't seen paperwork on that. I've only heard the stories.
I'll send it to you. It's pretty entertaining to read.
That's got it. Well, most of the time they are. There was, I have to read them at work, typically, if anything comes out related to PTC. Shocker. And there was one about that CSX train crash back in Ohio a couple years back, where they were coming up at a junction and one train was passing the other, and the train that was supposed to be stationary ran into the side of the guy that was passing and put a bunch of cars on the ground, cost a couple $1 million worth of damage, I think. And it was like a 160-page report, and it was only halfway through that they said that the engineer blew a .2 8 hours after the incident. It's like, wait, he blew a .2 8 hours after? You didn't, you talking about, like, possible causes of this incident, and you're like, oh, PTC signals, this stuff. Dude was hammered. Dude was 5 sheets to the wind, and the conductor apparently never saw him drink. So he must have just been mainlining something from a back. I don't know, man. Like, how do you get that wasted on the job?
Well, Class 1 is a whole world unto itself, let me tell you. It's nothing like it was back, we'll just say the early 80s, but yeah.
Yeah, still certainly a thing. General Rule G, yeah, still a rule.
Yeah, back in the day, if you were the new guy and you didn't show up with a handle and a 12-pack, you weren't doing anything.
All right, I've got a yellow signal here. All right, Justin, I don't know my aspects on the UP. What does yellow mean?
Oh boy, here we go. So, yellow means you need to slow to, on the old system...
20?
Yeah, I think it's 20 because you had to acknowledge it, but we'll do 30 because coming up on a switch. Wait, why do you have a yellow there? You shouldn't. I think there's another intermediate between you and the yard. But anyways, you got a yellow, so you got to slow to 30.
I got it in first service, and it looks like it's coming down. Coming down. Oh, yeah, right.
There goes all your slack and a knuckle.
That's fine.
So on the first service, there's
God, I could feel that.
So move it over to lap, since you got a good set on it.
Does first service just not? It doesn't hold it.
No, it will takes the first 6 pounds and then it leaks it down very slowly, so that way you have a very uniform brake pipe reduction through your whole train.
Ah, okay. So still continuing to. I guess that it sounded like it was continuing to apply, so it makes sense that it did.
So, and then on the rules concerning the first service position, once you go into it, remain in it for 30 seconds and then go to lap.
Oh, so we kind of did that correctly because I knew that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And then, unless you're doing a split service reduction, then you can do it for 20 seconds and then take your next set. But no, you're doing good.
Yeah, we slowed down past 30, so I came back out on it a little bit, and it seems to be holding pretty nice. It seems like we still got a set on the train somewhat, despite having recovered. And
actually, if you go to hit the boiler card again, you'll look at the bottom side. It says average reservoir auxiliary pressure.
And so we're less than 90, so...
So you need to charge the train up. So...
Well, we'll let it charge then.
I kind of view that as my rear... what the brake pipe gauge in the caboose says.
Gotcha.
That auxiliary.
That makes sense.
That gradient there.
Yeah, my gauge up here tells me what I have up here. It does not say what I have back there, which means you could have a totally different story, 50 cars, 60 cars back down the line.
Yep, had that happen the other day. Head in red 90, tail in red 69.
Nice. That's that's a bit of a leak.
But the crazy thing is, my flow is only like around 10.
Oh, interesting.
So I had hardly any flow. It was just because it was cold out, because it was during that really cold snap.
Ah.
Yep. Temperature really messes with brakes.
It really does. It's interesting. That's one of the reasons that the railroads are experimenting with new detection technologies. The BNSF has tried cold wheel detectors. I don't know if you've heard about those at all, Justin, but they're kind of cool. So they have a sensor at the top, a temp sensor at the top, and at the bottom of a hill. And per timetable, you have to set up a big gob of air and pull through it. And they check the temperature on each wheel when it gets to the bottom, and so they know what brake shoes are actually working and what aren't. And then they automatically put defects on the cars to get braking issues resolved, so you actually get a better product. More train cars actually braking. Because I think the rule is you can have something like 60 or 70% of the train having operable brakes, and then the other 85. Okay, yeah. So you can have a.
You have to have 100%, but that's.
Well, yeah. That's neither here nor there. Yeah, that's one of those little interesting things. But the cold wheel detector is really cool. It's really helping their mechanical reliability of their cars. And the safety valve won't shut up, so I'm just gonna back the fire off. Just let it do its thing.
Yeah, you can go ahead and knock the fire down. You'll come into the yard with a thinner fire, and because you're coming up on it here in a little bit.
Okay. So what's exhausting steam right now? It's not a safety.
That would be the blowdown.
Oh, so we've got an automatic blowdown on this?
Yep. Because if you go into the cab real quick, you should, on the automatic blowdown, you see the yellow lit.
Oh, is it on the foam meter? Yep. Oh, yeah.
It's detected foam and it's blowing it down for you, and it's done.
That's nifty. The fact that there is an automatic feedback controlled device on a steam engine. That's neat. Here's our next intermediate signal, still at yellow. Oh well.
Yeah, I think the other one should have been an advanced approach, a flasher, but...
Well, it's alright. Maybe they didn't have a vital flasher relay.
Improperly displayed signals. That's the other thing I don't like about this simulator is the signals just aren't based in reality at any point.
Sounds about right.
So I would start slowing down some more because you got the drill track there, so you're coming into the yard.
Oh yeah, we're the start of it. Finally, somebody else calling it a drill track. People have looked at me like I'm crazy. Why do you need that? Yards don't have that. Yes, they do. There it is. Lordy. Okay, so we'll go into first service again. Take a set and hold it.
First service for 30 seconds and bail off. And
right.
Stretched.
Yeah, keep it stretched, not jackknifing. So what I forgot to do, because this is a sim and I'm not in the cab, is anytime your automatic sets up with this kind of air brake, and most of the kinds of air brakes out there, it also applies the independent. And in this case, we want to keep it stretched, and we don't want that. So, yeah. So I have to bail off the independent by going to quick release all the way to the left.
It looks like that. You got a target into the yard there, and you're hitting it right at 10 miles an hour. Beautiful.
Perfect. Hey, look, I knew what I was doing, maybe. No, I've got a good pilot, because I don't know this subdivision at all. Oh, look at that.
Now,
that's cute.
That switch is also against you, but we'll just roll with it.
That's fine. We don't want to run through this.
Switch.
Is it? Look at that. Saved it. We don't want to bin it Railroads Online style. All right, let's kick the critical damage caused by priming. Oh, we hit the
we pay attention to the water level.
Well, we almost made it. We almost made it, everyone. I was too concerned about operating, and again, this is why you don't run and fire. And there were even two of us, and neither of us caught it. So,
right.
Well, this was a lot of fun.
Talking about the modern stuff.
We did. We got we're telling stories, and as I continue to say on this channel, they got me monologuing, and then I broke it. Oops. Well, Justin, thanks so much for joining me on this. This was really cool and great to talk to someone who really, really knows this a lot better than I do. And that was cool, and it was great to hear some of your experience. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And yeah, when you upload this to YouTube, if there's any further questions or anything, I'll pay attention and try to answer them.
Well, perfect. Yeah, I'll let you know, and we'll see when that happens. So again, thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the little bell if you want to see when content's coming out. So I hope you guys are liking this series and the content, not just in Railroads Online or Derail Valley, but also in Train Sim. So maybe next time we'll run the FEF. Thanks for watching, everyone.